Mr. Rigell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Secretary Lew, thank you for being here and for your testimony today. I appreciate Chairman Rogers bringing up our overall fiscal condition. It caused me to seek this office about 7.5 years ago, my first, because of my concern about our fiscal trajectory and our condition. And that's what I want to discuss with you briefly here. Let me first say that I believe that both sides have contributed to this. I think the evidence is pretty clear on that. As a fiscal conservative and as a Republican, I believe that we fought for this a lot harder, though. And I want to walk through that just a little bit. If I look at where we are on this growth, about 6 years of growth, our economy is cyclical. We're probably due for some type of correction here in the future. And then interest rates, I'm convinced, can only go one way. They can only go up. And all of this is really troubling to me. I think the consequences of us not addressing this are far more severe than I think most leaders in Washington. And I don't say that with any hubris, like I've got some special insight into it. In fact, I hope I'm wrong on all of this. But the evidence, I think, doesn't point to that. Here's a quote by then Senator Obama in 2006, "America has a debt problem and a failure of leadership." Now, I mention that because I'm mindful of the feeling that I had when I left the State of the Union address not long ago, and I thought about what he didn't say. He didn't really address our fiscal situation. I think he's failed to grasp our fiscal situation. I don't say that in a partisan way. He's my president right now, right? And I was really disappointed in my president. I don't think history is going to be kind to us. And I'm going to give you time to respond to this, and maybe you can tell me, Congressman Rigell, it's not as bad as you think it is. I'm not sure how you can work through that, though, because every trend is going the wrong direction. And I'm convinced that your administration, the administration, and I'd respectfully submit that you as Secretary of the Treasury have a duty to raise the alarm level here and put a sense of urgency about this. And I want to give you some time to respond. And thank you for being here.
Congressman, I think the economy is in far better shape than you've just described. I think that we're seeing very strong consumer demand. We're seeing housing come back. We're seeing job growth at very sustained, strong levels. We have a lot more work to do. But when it comes to our fiscal condition, you cannot compare where we are today to where we were 7 years ago. When we had a financial crisis and a recession driving the deficit after a period of just building it up through policy decisions, and we've reduced the deficit from 10 to 2.5%.
Let me say this, and I only cut you off because our time is so limited. Every administration official that's testified here, at least the ones that I've heard, there's always a backward-looking. And look, let's just even say hypothetically,
Sure.
let's just say I agree with that.
So I was going to go forward.
What I'm not seeing is this really fighting for mandatory spending reform. It's just not happening. It just isn't.
Congressman, if you look at the trajectory under our budget, even under the baseline for the next 10 years, we've restored stability to a situation that was out of control. There is much more policy that needs to be discussed. It's not all mandatory spending. There's tax issues as well. We've done a lot to reduce the deficit. We've reduced discretionary spending. We've solved some of the tax problems, though not all of them. And while I know we don't agree on the Affordable Care Act, through the Affordable Care Act, we reduced spending on health care programs. So we've done a lot over these 7 years.
Well,
we now have a foundation to work together. If we could get into a space for a bipartisan conversation like we had in the 90s, perhaps we can.
Well, part of this, the president has got to lead and make the case with every American that for us to get out of this, that there has to be the thoughtful and substantive reform on the mandatory side. I'm not seeing it. Look, I had an opportunity to speak to him once privately. I did. He said, "Scott, what's on your mind?" I said, "Mr. President, we're not doing enough on this. We're not doing right by our children," and he's not fighting for it. I just haven't seen it. And I know that the clock's ticking on the administration's time, but I would implore you, just as a fellow American, to make this case, because if we don't, we get on the flip side of debt, and we're about there right now, and then your lender starts telling you what to do. I thank you, and out of respect for my chairman, I think I'll yield back, but thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I could just take 30 seconds. I've spent most of my professional life trying to point this country in the right direction on a fiscal path. I presided over 3 surplus budgets. No other living budget director, no past budget director can say that. I understand the importance in the right time of having a balanced budget. Right now, if you ask me what's the most critical thing for the economic future of this country, it would be getting a bipartisan consensus on things like building infrastructure, dealing with immigration reform, doing the things that would build the foundation of our economy. Those are immediate pressing needs. I actually think we have some time to deal with these other issues. Certainly, there's more work to do on the entitlement side. There's more work to do on the tax side. I think we've gone too far on the appropriation side. It was meant to trigger action on the other issues. It's incrementally had that effect. That's how we got an agreement last year and 2 years ago. So I think if you look at where we've come over the last 5 years, in pieces, we've put together many of the elements of what was once called a grand bargain, with more work to do. And we do have more work to do, but I think we're in a very strong place going forward.
I thank you